Hey everybody, and welcome to the living room. My name is Alex the Technologist, and this is a podcast by 505-O-Matic. Today we're going to be talking about housing mistrust, housing issues in Santa Fe. Basically what we're going to be doing tonight is solving the housing crisis in Santa Fe. We've got experts here, and we're going to have all of the answers delivered to you tonight. No, of course, kidding. This is a very complicated topic, but we are going to have a lot of people from across the spectrum, people who work in policy, those who work in nonprofits, in tenants' rights, and those who have firsthand experience with houselessness. But before we even get into this really complex topic, we thought we'd kind of warm you up a little bit, try and raise the energy up in here a little bit. And we want to test your knowledge. We want to see how much you know about the housing issues in Santa Fe. And so we've got a little quiz for you all that we are calling How's Your Knowledge? So there are 7 questions that we're going to go through. And the way that this is going to work is I'm going to read the question, and it's a multiple choice. So I'm going to read through all of the answers, and then I'm going to read through them again. I'm going to want you to applaud where you think this is the correct answer for the question. Got it? So let's give this first one a test. All right. So question 1. By what percentage has the median rent increased in Santa Fe between 2017 and 2024? Is it A, 31%, B, 49%, C, 74%, or D, 89%? So let's give an applause if you think it's 31%. All right. Give an applause if you think it's 49%. Okay. C, if you think, let's see if you think it's 74%. Or D, 89%. Okay, some smart whips in here. It's 74% is the median rent increase in Santa Fe between 2017 and 2024. That hurts my pocketbook. Question 2. Between 2015 and 2021, Santa Fe County has added about 9,517 new households. I like how it's about. Very specific number. It has added about 9,517 new households. How many new housing units were added during that same time? Is it A, 8,943, B, 7,413, C, 5,815, or D, 10,129? Give an applause if you think it's 8,943 for 9,517 new households. Okay. Do you think it's 7,413 housing units? 5,815? Or 10,129? No. I think y'all read this report, didn't you? I think y'all, because and so you know, the source for this quiz, by the way, is coming from the City of Santa Fe's 5-year affordable housing strategic plan, prepared by the Root Policy Research Office for the Office of Affordable Housing and Community Development Department. And I think y'all read this report because y'all just know, or maybe you're just living it. It's probably because you're living it. All right, question 4. By 2019, what percentage of people working in Santa Fe commuted from outside of the city? Is it A, 46%, B, 52%, C, 55%, or D, 59%? So give an applause if you think it's 46%. An applause if you think it's 52%. 55%. Okay. Or 59%. They're all it's 55%. All of those were rather, you had to be very specific. So how hard did you really study? That's the one to really see if you studied. Also, I think I skipped question 3. Did I skip question 3? I did. So we're going backwards. We'll fix it in post. Question 3. Between 2019 and 2021, which age group increased its share of Santa Fe's population? Is it A, 66% and older, B, 47% to 64%, 74 to 60, 40, I cannot read these numbers. Is it A, 66 and older, B, 47 to 64, C, 25 to 44, or D, all age groups increased? So if you think it's if you think it's A, 66 and older, give it a applause. Okay. If you think it's B, 47 to 64. if you think it's C, 25 to 44. Or D, all age groups increased. It's actually C, 25 to 44. So, I mean, I know the median age of Santa Fe is starting to decrease because people are coming back. That's something I've learned about living here in Santa Fe. It's very much boomerang town, and a lot of the kids who've grown up here are starting to come back, and I kind of like it about that here. Question 5. According to stakeholders, how many people are estimated to be homeless? I'm going to say this again. According to stakeholders, how many people are estimated to be houseless in the city of Santa Fe, including the hidden houseless? Is it A, 137 to 468, B, 300 to 2,043, C, 1,579 to 3,024, or D, over 5,000? So if you think it's A, 137 to 468, B, 300 to 2,043, C, 1,579 to 3,024, or D, over 5,000? The answer is B, 300 to 2,043. Hidden houseless, y'all. We'll be talking about it. Question 6, and I want to preface this one by really letting you know that this is kind of another setup to tonight's discussion. So, according to AirDNA, which is an analysis tracker for short-term rentals like Airbnb, how many short-term rentals are currently active in Santa Fe? 1,179, B, 2,017, C, 2,843, or D, 3,487? So applaud if you think it's A, 1,179, B, 2,017, C, 2,843, or D, 3,487? Okay. It's C, 2,843 short-term rentals are currently active in the city of Santa Fe. Last question for you. As of 2021, how many affordable housing units are needed for households earning below 50% of area median income in Santa Fe? Is it A, 1,843, B, 2,297, C, 2,913, or D, 3,145? Give an applause if you think it's A, 1,843. And again, the question is, how many affordable housing units are needed for households earning below 50% of area median income? 1,843, 2,297, 2,913, or D, 3,145? This is one that you all kind of got wrong. So it's 2,297, but I think I'm going to score you all 6 out of 7 on that one. This was a difficult one. Well, that's our quiz, and I think you all absolutely passed it. I think you all have read that report. You know this experience, and that's just shows how important this is to you all by the fact that you all are here and the fact that you're also very knowledgeable. So I'm going to go ahead and pass the show over now to our host for the night, Katie Gross, who will be introducing the panel.
Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for joining us for this important discussion. It's great to see a lot of familiar faces and unfamiliar faces that will hopefully soon be familiar. So first, I want to introduce our panelists for today's discussion. To my left, I have Stephanie Nakhleh, is a journalist and planning commissioner in Los Alamos. Raised in New Mexico, she has spent 3 decades writing for regional publications, including the Santa Fe New Mexican, Tumbleweeds, New Mexico Kids, the now defunct Los Alamos Monitor, and as co-founder of the Los Alamos news outlet Boomtown. She now publishes We Can Have Nice Things, a Substack newsletter focusing on housing, land use, and governance. Her recent work examines how exclusionary zoning and community resistance make it nearly impossible to build the homes and services New Mexico needs. Please welcome Stephanie. Next, we have Cathy Garcia. She's got a fan club. Cathy Garcia was born and raised in Bell, Maywood, and Downey, California, by mixed-status Mexican immigrants who arrived in the U.S. in the 1960s. She was the first in her family to complete college, St. John's College in Santa Fe, the first to drop out of a master's program, University of California, Los Angeles, and the first to drop out of law school, University of New Mexico. Yeah, that's great. Since returning to Santa Fe in 2015, Cathy has continued working to empower youth, their families, and their communities in the struggle for systemic change. She is currently a communications organizer with Chainbreaker Collective. Welcome, Cathy. We are very lucky that Melinda, aka Pants, has joined us today. If any of you saw 505-O-Matic's video we did on microcommunities the other day, Melinda graciously shared her story of being unhoused in Santa Fe. And she's a current resident at the microcommunity at the Arroyo Chamiso microcommunity at the Christ Lutheran Church. So thank you for being here, Melinda. And we have Veronica Toledo, who serves as the Director of Policy and Advocacy at Homewise, where she leads the organization's policy development and grassroots organizing efforts to advance housing affordability, sustainability, and connectivity in Santa Fe and Albuquerque. She also oversees the Livability in the Land of Enchantment program, which includes a speaker series, fellowship, officials cohort, and practitioners cohort designed to educate and engage residents and decision makers around affordable housing solutions. So thank you, Veronica. All right. No, I changed the order. Yeah, I know. That would have been very magical. Okay, so I want to get right into it. I first want to say I had a conversation with Daniel Werwath, who many of you know has been working in affordable housing for over 20 years, and he made a statement that he thinks that Santa Fe is currently in a death spiral when it comes to housing. And he meant by that we're in this negative feedback loop around everything being geared towards the wealthiest people in our community. Not just housing costs, but the price of food, the price of transportation, et cetera, et cetera. It feels like we've been in a housing crisis for a long time. And my question for you is, are we at a tipping point? Have we reached a tipping point? And why is addressing the housing crisis especially urgent right now? And feel free to grab these microphones. Cathy, do you want to begin?
Sure. Well, I guess I would start by saying that one, challenges that Santa Fe is facing are not unique. Anyone who's lived anywhere across this country, internationally, is seeing that the housing crisis is at this point an international one. So the challenges are not unique to Santa Fe. I think what we need to focus on are the unique circumstances of Santa Fe, the unique resources that we have here, the unique opportunities that we have going on. So, I mean, first of all, we were one of the first cities in the country, I think the first one, to pass a living wage tied to inflation. So I think, yeah, that's before San Francisco, that is before Los Angeles. So those are some of the things we need to elevate, right? So one of the other things we have going on that's unique is we currently have a 100-acre city-owned parcel sitting in the middle of our city. That is unprecedented across the country. When Chainbreaker is saying, what are we doing about community engagement, development without displacement, and community land trusts on the Midtown campus, we're looking at the unique resources and opportunities that Santa Fe has. What we also know is that these cities, we're groups of people. People endure. So that's what matters. Members endure, our people endure, the residents of a city endure. So as long as we have each other and we continue organizing, talking to our neighbors, we're going to be fine.
I mean, Cathy said it all, but I would just say, we're definitely at a tipping point. We heard the statistics. Many of us are living these statistics, right? With 50% of our workforce living outside of Santa Fe County. These are people that we rely on every single day: teachers, police officers, firefighters, people working in hospitality, and so much more. So people are commuting hundreds of hours each week at an enormous cost to them, their families, their wallets, and the environment. And so I would just say, now is the time, and that's why we're all here, is to really figure out what action we can take to improve the future of Santa Fe and current Santa Fe.
And I would just say, I agree with everything. I grew up in northern New Mexico, and I've seen, from the time I was a child, I feel like Los Alamos and Santa Fe have become kind of a monoculture of white wealthy people, and I don't think that's good. I think economic diversity is good. I think we're displacing the people who make our towns run. And in my own work that I've done, it is we're not building enough housing. That's my main focus. And Los Alamos added 10,000 jobs, but pretty much no housing at all. It's been like 8,000 houses since I was a child in Los Alamos. So all those people, they had to move to Santa Fe, and then they displaced Santa Fe people, and it's just this chain of displacement because we're just not building enough. Ooh, I just realized I'm just not tucking into this thing. We're not building enough housing. So I think it is urgent. The homelessness rate, and I think we maybe covered this in the quiz, but in the country has gone up 40%. So homelessness has risen 40% in the country, which is bad. It has risen 87% in New Mexico, which is a lot worse. And that is primarily a housing supply issue. So it is urgent, and it is not something we can ignore any longer.
And how did you come to this conclusion, Stephanie?
Oh, sorry. I was ready to hand off.
No, that's okay. I'll get to Melinda.
I came to the conclusion, I was not born with these opinions. I have studied the issue. I've studied the data, kind of approach it. I'm not a scientist, but I was raised by one, married one, raised two kids who were scientists. So I have kind of a scientist way of thinking, and the data is just what convinced me. It's just the data and the evidence that have convinced me.
Great. And Melinda, what is your sense of urgency around this issue?
It seems urgent, but I've been waiting for 9 years for things to happen. So, and it's been slow process. I moved 400 times in those 9 years and run into the gamut of all kinds of people in different stages of what they're dealing with and what they're able to accomplish. It seems things are moving a little bit better now, and I don't know if that's just because I'm housed now. But I do know that it's certainly easier once you get help and accept help. And it seems to be that there's a lot of that now, which is good.
So that kind of brings us up to the idea of a spectrum of housing. So when we say we need to build more houses, can any of you talk about the kinds of houses we need? Is there a particular kind, or is it, a whole spectrum of housing that we need to be building?
Well, I guess what I'll say here is that, yes, certainly we need to build new housing. What we're seeing, though, is that time is of the essence. And what we're seeing is that with the unpredictability of all of the things in the world out of our control, if we stay focused as say that's the only solution, then we're going to not get anywhere. So we have to apply this magic buckshot approach of where's new builds coming from, but how are we making sure that the affordable housing funds that are governmentally based, whether at the city, the county, or the state level, that those pennies are actually also coming down and raining from the heavens if we know the feds are drying up, right? So there's sweeping, all kinds of sweeping changes that need to be made at the policy level. Again, go ahead and read these policy platforms that Homewise and Chainbreaker and a bunch of other groups have signed on to, because again, right, these things make sense. There are solutions here. But we also know that we need to remediate and convert existing builds. And same thing, right? How quickly is that happening, and how fast are we able to move? So there's there's the speed of democracy, and then there's the urgency. Right, so those things are in attention, but what we say at Chainbreaker is that's why we organize. That's why we get people to get involved in the renters defense committees and come on down, learn about the issues, and then when are we going to go to city council and say, hey, what are y'all doing about this? And it's an election year, but again, what we're seeing is this is a generational process. It is not just about this election or the next election. It is our children who are also going to be talking about what is going to be done on Midtown.
On that note, I do want to say I reached out to at least 4 people from the city to be on the panel, and they are not here. So you can come to your own conclusions about that. But yeah, so what can you tell maybe Veronica, tell us more about this platform and what you're hoping to accomplish with that, and why these are kind of 2 different questions, but why all of you in your capacities as a journalist, as an organizer, as a nonprofit developer, what can you all do together, and what do you need the city to do?
Yeah, so we came together with 10 organizations total. So that includes Chainbreaker, Homewise, Habitat for Humanity, the Housing Trust, the Home Builders Association, Midtown Arts and Design Alliance, and others. I'm not listing all of them. Santa Fe, Friends of Architecture, Santa Fe.
Chamber of Commerce.
Chamber of Commerce, yes.
The brought real estate folks. I mean, this is when
We
we're
have
talking big
developers
tent
in the
coalition
group,
here.
Brought real estate. So I think, yes, we wanted to really bring a diverse coalition together because we know that the city is not responding at the scale and the urgency that this crisis demands. And so the platform that we've laid out are key action steps that we want mayoral and city council candidates to commit to delivering upon in office to really address sort of the legal, regulatory, and implementation barriers that are driving up housing costs across all types of development. So there are 3 buckets to this. One is protect, which is really about protecting existing Santa Feans who make up the culture of this city. And so one of those pieces is that to drive down housing costs, we do have to build more. There's a lot of other things we have to do too, but we need to build more. And so the Santa Fe is updating its land development code and general plan for the first time in many years. So that's a great chance to really ensure well-planned growth. So we have a component that really outlines that. And then there's a lot about protecting renters. So many people don't realize, or you may realize it because you've had to live it, but the reality is that there are a bunch of protections on the books for renters and no enforcement for those protections. And so that's a component. There's also emergency rental assistance in there, a repair fund for landlords. The second bucket is around invest. And this is really, a lot of people don't realize that affordable housing requires subsidy. You have land costs, you have construction costs, all of these things. But most developers are actually developing affordable units at a big loss. So Homewise, for example, where I work, on average, and every project is different, but on average, we're losing $70,000 per affordable unit. And so we rely on subsidy and we cross-subsidize with market rate units. But it's really hard to make it financially feasible. So we're really calling on the city to invest in the subsidies and the infrastructure, so our roads and utilities, that we need to make affordable housing possible. And then the final component is around investing. And this is really about permitting. And this is how do we create better coordination between the public and the private sector. We need a more efficient land use department and transparent land use department. And then we also need goals around how many housing units we are going to build every single year in this city. And so we've actually set out goals for what we believe the city should be permitting in terms of supportive housing and affordable rentals, and then also in terms of homeownership units. And so overall, this platform really calls for bold leadership and clear goals because now is the time to act on these issues. So the QR code is up, but you can also go to housingforsantafe.com if you're interested in reading the full platform. And we hope you do, and sign on to support it.
We'll bring up the QR code at the end. Yes,
I
please.
just want to jump in on the affordable housing requires subsidy. Capital A affordable housing is subsidized housing. There's also, and this is very confusing to people, there's also housing that is naturally more affordable, and we don't actually, that's illegal in most of New Mexico. So a townhouse or duplex or a granny flat, Pew Charitable Trust did a study on New Mexico housing, and about 80% of our residential land is zoned for only detached single-family homes. So think about that for a minute. Like almost all the land can only have like a little castle on it, right? And so all of these much more affordable housing types, they're just illegal on almost all of our land. And in other cities where they have legalized missing middle housing, that's why it's missing, like duplexes and townhomes and little granny flats. People will build those things, and they don't require subsidy. Like almost every American lives in market rate housing. We don't live in subsidized housing. Americans, we kind of have just sucked at building subsidized housing. So almost everybody lives in market rate housing, but we've manipulated the market to make actually affordable housing basically illegal. So the first thing I think we have to do is like legalize these small houses that people can actually afford. So there's got to be like there has to be, thank you, there has to be like a subsidy angle to it for sure, because the market's just never going to take care of everybody. It's just not. So we have to have subsidized housing, but we have to legalize the housing that people need to live in. Yep. That was it.
And I think we need to, like, they're now saying 7 to 8 houses per acre is what is needed, right, to have sustainable, affordable housing. And right now it's 1. Right?
More than that for transit. If you want good public transit, you got to have more like 10 units per acre.
And this is a land use issue, right, or like a zoning issue that the city needs to redo, right?
Yeah, anyone in Los Angeles can tell you that the opposite of sprawl is density.
Yes, density. People have talked about density, and that seems to be a bad word, or evokes strong feelings
Another
in
way
this
to
community.
say it is compact development. This is a nicer way to say
Walkable urbanism.
it. Right.
I like branding.
Yes, right. I will just share, Homewise runs a livability speaker series where we bring national speakers, we pair them with local leaders to talk about the link between land use and zoning and affordability and sustainability. I just wanted to share, we have a session coming up on Tuesday right here at the Farmers Market Pavilion, Tuesday evening from 6 to 8, where we are bringing a woman named Sarah Bronin, who is an author, she's an attorney, an architect, and the title of her session is Unlocking the City, How Zoning Shapes Santa Fe's Future. And so she's going to talk about looking specifically at the Santa Fe context, what are things that we could be doing here around zoning, and sharing a lot of national precedent for this kind of stuff. And so really encourage you to come if you're interested in zoning and land use.
That's great, because I was going to ask about what is unique to Santa Fe in terms of a lack of progress on these issues. I know historic preservation has a lot of sway when it comes to development. This land use, the zoning, exclusionary zoning, things like that. Do any of you have a perspective on that? What's unique to Santa Fe?
Well, Santa Fe really likes low and brown, right? That's the term I always hear. Like, we got to keep everything short and stuccoed. And well, great, but like nobody can live here, so maybe we should rethink that. Yeah.
I mean, like I said, our land development code and general plan haven't been updated in so many years. And other cities are doing just so many incredible things. Like, for example, relaxing parking mandates or parking requirements. Don't come at me. I know that parking is important, and we certainly need more parking in certain parts of town. But I will say one thing that people don't realize is parking units cost a developer like $25,000 to $35,000 to build. And that's just that just is passed on to the home buyer or to the renter. It also means that they're building fewer units. And so I'm not saying no parking, but I'm saying we need to relax those mandates to enable greater housing, to lower costs for people. It also, like Stephanie was talking about, increases walkability, bikeability, connectivity. And so I think we need to be looking at more of those things. There's also states across the country, Washington, California, Oregon, Colorado, that have made it so that cities have to provide a housing needs assessment. They have to look at what the needs are. They have to create goals, and then they have to make sure that their zoning aligns to those goals. Like I said here, we don't really have goals around housing, and so those types of policies are things that we really need to improve Santa Fe.
If we also know that there's ways to negotiate, let's say, with private developers, community benefits agreements, for example, right? So it's one thing to talk about what can government do and what can this do, right? But if we can't negotiate it, government can negotiate it on our behalf. For example, when a developer is approaching a governmental entity saying, hey, I would like some of these subsidies, some of these funding streams, the city, the county, the state, they can negotiate and say, yes, you get this money, but not only do you have to do this, you have to build this many affordable units. Maybe if it's mixed use, you're also going to have to hire percentage of local residents, percentage of school student, whatever, right? So those are the kinds of things that we say come to the meeting to help us dream big about what the solutions are, right? Because we also think that every single person in here who is a renter, who has had to move, who has had to face a challenge with your landlord on how do I get my deposit back? I can't believe they're raising my rent. You know what the problems are, right? So you can read these reports and you can look at this data, and absolutely it informs what's going on. But yeah, our lived experience is what's telling us how we're going to get out of this situation. So you come to a meeting, read these reports with us, and figure out how are we actually going to take all of the unique circumstances in Santa Fe and actually get our way out of this crisis.
And Melinda, speaking of lived experience, maybe you can shed some light on just some of the challenges you've experienced with, just being unhoused in this community.
It took a while for me to, I stayed away from the shelters initially, and I put myself in roommate situations that did not go well. Many of them over and over again. In hindsight, it would have saved me the relationship and emotional toll that I had to deal with in avoiding the shelters. Had I gone sooner, I would have been more open and agreeable to getting help and not just thinking I could solve it myself, because that isn't something I could do. And so I would worry about other people who, didn't have education, experience, age, and how despondent they were, not even wanting to try to get out of the situations that they were in.
And what is you're living in a micro community right now?
Since February.
Since February. And how has that helped you, and where are you hoping to go after this?
Well, I'm working on a permanent housing voucher. You're working on getting the paperwork together. I've lost all of my stuff at least 9 times. So starting over from scratch, and we're talking bare bones everything, 9 times at least. That takes time, and it's hard for you to do and pursue anything else. So it's given me the time to be able to, okay, I don't have to worry about where I'm going to sleep tonight, where I'm going to take a shower, how I'm going to eat. Those things are met, and it's nice. And there's case management on site, which, they get you going. They don't just let you linger, which is good, because you kind of need to transition into doing stuff again that isn't just for basic survival.
So I want to pivot a little bit to talking about how much progress Santa Fe made in the 1990s and 2000s when it came to affordable housing. A lot of movement happened, and it's felt like things have kind of stagnated over the last 10 years, or I've heard that they've stagnated, and we talk about things. But how do we balance this with the public perception that things have been kind of rushed lately? Some of the decisions made have not had a lot of community input, or at least the perception there hasn't been a lot of community input. What are your thoughts on this balance of, taking decisive action, progress, but having community involved in the process, and how we can make that process better?
I have a lot of thoughts on community input. As a planning commissioner, I see who shows up at the meetings, and it's pretty much the landed gentry. It's pretty much the people who were allowed to vote for the very first president of the United States, right? It's like old white men, no shade to old white men, but that's pretty much who shows up. And that is not just my opinion or my observation. It's been studied and shown that community input, I would say it's broken, but I don't actually think it's broken. I think it's designed this way. And it's really problematic. So it feels like a vote, but if this is the only kind of people who are showing up, it's really not a vote. And one of the ways I think about it is the meeting started at 6 o'clock. Well, everybody's commuting at 6 o'clock. Like, you got to take care of your kids at 6 o'clock. Of course, it's only going to be like retirees who can show up. So we have to change our community input to actually be democratic. It's wildly undemocratic at the moment. And I have lots of ideas about like ways we can shift it around that are creative, but mostly it's like very broken, our community input process. So in my experience, we are not, maybe on the like specific things like urban alchemy, things are being rushed. And I think you've done some great reporting on that. But in general, things are definitely not being rushed. In blue cities, Democrats just really love like very long processes and talking and thinking, and they don't really love outcomes that much. And we need to start holding our leaders to account and like insisting on actual outcomes that help people.
Agreed. So speaking to holding folks to account, right? So you folks will remember that when the Santa Fe University of Art and Design shut down, that was when the city had purchased the what we're calling now the Midtown parcel. That was the time when Chainbreaker and Chainbreaker's 800 dues-paying members started walking and knocking doors throughout Hopewell, Man, knocking over 17,000 doors during that time, asking folks, what do you want to happen in your neighborhood? And that was the community engagement that Chainbreaker engaged in. That also forced the city to pay attention to what was being said by those 17,000 doors we knocked, right? Because you're right, it's broken. And that's what we do, is we fix it. So we go in and we don't just talk the talk or walk the walk, we knock the knock. So come join us. We need you to help us knock these doors, because that's how we get everyone to participate into these processes. And Chainbreaker is still paying attention to every single move that the city is making on that Midtown campus. So again, if you would like to know, participate, and have your voice involved in that, come to a meeting.
And we need more people like you, Melinda, to be on the planning commission. Yes. Right?
100%.
I would just add, I think, right now input processes around development, typically when there's a new development, only the immediate neighbors are notified. And I think that everyone throughout the city that could be impacted by those developments deserves a voice. And so I also think we need to reshape the way that our input is being gathered in the city around things. I also think, you'll hear me a ton talking about the land development code, and I'm sorry, we do development and I can't help it. But I will say that this is happening in 3 phases. Phase 1 is just supposed to be focused on like organization and clarity of the document. Phase 2 is where you're making substantive changes. So we're thinking about parking, we're thinking about these like single family zones, et cetera. So we are still stuck in phase 1. Phase 1, they went through a robust community input process. They had a lot of people working on this, different committees. It was supposed to be introduced to council 6 months ago and still hasn't been heard. And so I would say that's one example of some of these pretty intense delays that are happening. We have a lot of developments from various developers across the city that are taking years to get through entitlements processes. Those are all the things that you have to do before you can even start construction. And so when we're taking that long to get projects through the pipeline, we're not getting housing on the ground for people that really need it. And so I think, some things have been rushed, but there are a lot of things that are just going too slow for what this crisis demands.
And just to touch on the urban alchemy thing, I know none of you are experts on this, but I'm just curious, the $9 million that the city is giving to urban alchemy, what else could that money be used for?
I'm going to send that over to Cathy.
Well, I thought it was rhetorical.
It could be. We can all sit and ponder that. No, but seriously, could that be used for rental assistance? Could it be used for building new houses?
We're still talking too small. 9 million. So what we're talking about is Where's the transfer tax in the Court of Appeals? Where are the alternate theories, plans if the transfer tax fails at the Court of Appeals level? So again, it's one thing to say, here's what the city's doing. I want to know what the Court of Appeals is doing. I want to know what the state government is doing. I want to know what the Western Association of Governors is doing, because it's not just one level of government. I think that's also part of this crisis. Everyone is too busy trying to make their bills, trying to get their kids to school, trying to figure out, well, what precinct am I even in, to figure out, well, am I going to go to a city council meeting, right? So there's some realities there that we're also just, I think if we're just 9 million, 10 million, we're lost. We're lost in the sauce. Mm-hmm. I don't want to get lost in the sauce. And I do like red chili, though. It is the best. I might choose red lady every time.
When you say transfer tax, is that the excise?
Yes, that is the high-end excise tax, the 3% over and above $1 million real estate sales. So we had Carol Burnett's house sell in the midst of, while we've been waiting for the transfer tax decision to come down. So yeah, I think that's been fun. One of the fun things I've been doing is tracking the sales of high-end homes and going, how much would that have generated for the transfer tax? And because I'm a data and policy math nerd myself, so yeah, that's what I do for fun. Again, come hang out.
And for those of you who don't know, that money generated from that tax goes into the Affordable Housing Trust Fund.
And I will say on the platform, that's something that we're asking for right now. Only $3 million annually is going into that trust fund, and that goes towards down payment assistance, construction of new affordable units, and rental assistance. But $3 million is pennies in the bucket. And so we're asking for $6 million. So to double that, still nowhere near enough, but we're asking to double that amount, and that it come from the general fund, which it has historically, but as all of you may have seen, right now they decided it's going to come from excess GRT, gross receipts tax. The problem with that is it means that there's also not a stable, steady funding source for that, because it could change next year. We might not have those excess funds. And so that's something that we're really committed to, is especially without this excise tax, how are we making up for that and making sure that we're putting more into that for more affordable units and rental assistance and down payment assistance?
I think I'm going to hand it over to the audience now, because I'm sure there are a lot of questions or thoughts that the audience would like to ask. So Warren will go around.
Got a question right up here. Thank you. My name is Ben. I'm a community health worker in Albuquerque. I specifically work with those on Medicare and Medicaid, so generally our older population. But I'm curious about your guys' definitions of affordable housing, because I don't think the label it has is affordable. There's a senior, specifically a senior living affordable home property in a one-bedroom is $956 a month. They have to be making under $33,000. They also have to be making double the rent to even rent there. So when I hear affordable housing, I don't think anyone is making, a very small amount is making $1,900 to then participate in that property. And so I think the definition of affordable housing is way off. I don't think it is affordable. And so I'm wondering, what is that definition for you, specifically as the aging population only grows? It's only going to get bigger. I think it's supposed to be 1 in 4 by 2045 is going to be above 65. So what does that mean?
My immediate thought, again, based on all of the conversations that I've had with all of our Chainbreaker members over these last years, this topic right now that we're focused on is housing, right? So we can talk about housing affordability, market rate this, and rent burden that, but that's one side of the squeeze. The other side of the squeeze is income, right? So wages are simply not rising fast enough, right? So if we're only talking about housing without talking about what's squeezing us on the other end, same thing, we're getting lost in the sauce. So we're talking about what? Guaranteed basic incomes. We're talking about a profit sharing, We're talking about decommodification of land off the speculative market. So these things sound pie in the sky, but again, if we're not talking about the top and the bottom squeeze, then we're not talking about anything. So these need to stop being pie in the sky ideas and made into a reality. So there's only one way to force political will, and that's the will of the people.
How much would we lose? Sorry. How much would we lose with like rent control in Albuquerque? I know Santa Fe has that here now. Albuquerque, it's been shot down. No?
Got to talk to the New Mexico legislature about overturning the rent control prohibition from the start. It's a non-starter here until that happens.
Okay, but sorry, my bad. I thought that passed here. I know Albuquerque, it's been shot down repeatedly. That alone to me, I know you're talking about it's 70,000. I think you said lost per unit. Is there like an estimate like how much that would lose, or is there a way to again avoid that?
I'm not sure I'm understanding your question.
Like,
Sorry.
With rent cap, like rental control, like again with affordable properties, we're saying we're losing money.
So I guess the only thing that I can say, right, because I can only speak to what we know and what we've seen, because we haven't seen what that might look like in New Mexico. What we know, for example, is that states, cities that do have rent control, it means nothing without enforcement. So we can look at New York and how they enforce. We can look at LA, how they enforce. But again, right, so any of them, right? The first is just the allowance of rent control, then it's the enforcement of it. So until then, anything would just be kind of speculative of what might it look like here. We have to actually look at those places. And again, we focus here in the city of Santa Fe. That's where our members are. We focus on the neighborhoods that are on the front lines, lowest income, right, highest poverty, highest percentage people of color. So those are the things that we look at, because again, we can't really look at data that doesn't really exist, which is also a bit of a problem. I mean, we haven't even experimented with some of those things to even know here's what would happen if.
So one issue with rent control is if it doesn't come with a commensurate increase in supply, it's basically like, you walk into a place with you're hungry and you walk into a place with pizza and you can rent control each slice of pizza, but if like it got 1,000 hungry people, it's not really going to help to control just the price. It really has to come with an increase in supply. And then cities that have done rent control without increasing supply, people just stop building. And so the people who are in the rent controlled units definitely benefit. Like that, it definitely is an anti-displacement measure. But if you don't combine it with more supply, then you really are kind of moving the problem around. So that's been borne out by the data. If you do only rent control without allowing more housing to be built, you are going to help a few people, but you're probably going to hurt in the end a lot more people. So you've got to tackle these things from multiple fronts.
Just a note really quick on affordable housing and how it's defined. So everyone has their own definitions, right? At Homewise, we are a nonprofit. It's really focused on helping people access home ownership. And so we provide free financial education and coaching, real estate services. Our realtors are salaried, not commissioned, and lending services. And we provide down payment assistance that lowers the market rate cost of a home. And the way that we determine what's affordable is actually set by the Santa Fe Homes program. So if a developer we know that here in Santa Fe, a developer has to make a certain percentage of homes in their project affordable. Fee in lieu is a separate topic. I'm sure we're going to get questions about it. But so just think about if a developer has to make a certain percentage affordable, the city of Santa Fe actually sets out the pricing schedule based on area median income, family size, and then the number of bedrooms. And so that's how Homewise, how we determine like how much assistance we can provide to someone is based on that schedule. So just for example, if you're at 60% area median, if you're at 80% area median income, which is something like $65,000, if you're a family of 3, then you're looking at a 2-bedroom house costing about $161,000. Still high, but when you compare that to the median home price of $612,000, that's really important and really makes homeownership accessible. But they also have a chart around affordability for rentals too. So I recommend checking that out on the City of Santa Fe website if you're interested. The county has something comparable too.
Hi, my name is Mara. I know Cathy. And I think I went to high school with Stephanie. This is so great that you guys are putting this on. I want to talk about the landed gentry. I think it's undeniable that the people who have to jump through the hoops are the low-income people and renters. No matter what, if you're applying for a housing voucher, you got to fill out the forms. Nobody's there to help you. If you want to get legal aid, for example, you have to fall within 200% of the federal poverty guidelines, and jump through all those hoops just to do that. And then if you want to hire an attorney, you've got to be able to afford that, right? So there's just a huge, huge population of people that can't afford it. So how can we pressure landlords and apartment management corporations to stop being so freaking greedy?
The answer is always organized, right? So the only way to pressure, folks who are, let's say unscrupulous, doing things that is, because look, New Mexico does have renter protections. They're not super duper robust, but they're not non-existent. So part of it is, do you know what they are? Do you know how they're different from other places? Because that's even part of this, let's say, misinformation. As we know, a lot of people say, well, I lived in California, it worked like this. It means that when I move, it's going to be completely different. Sorry. The rules are different now. And so again, this is part of this challenge of when people move and they're displaced, everything is different, right? We have to start all over. The laws in Texas are not the ones in New Mexico, are not the ones in New Jersey, right? So all of that we're learning as you're trying to make rent. So again, the problem is just so huge. I don't even know where to begin. That's why I always say, well, we have to organize, because I don't really know what the answer is. I know it's, we have the answer though.
So I think one answer that I would have to that is when Austin built like a shit ton of, can we curse? When Austin built a shit ton of housing, like the media was like, oh my God, rents are falling, the sky's falling out of the housing market. And like the way to stick it to the landlords is to actually increase supply. Like we've had landlords show up to our land, our planning meetings, and I know they're like, I don't want to see any more houses being built, because of course they're benefiting from the lack of supply. Like the lack of supply is what everybody's greedy. Like greed's not different in Houston versus Dallas, but housing costs have decreased in Houston dramatically. Homelessness has dropped like 30% in Houston. It's gone up like the same amount in Dallas, and it's not like greed's not different between those two cities, but housing supply is. So really, there are many things. It's not just one thing, but really, if you have just a shit ton of housing, it turns from a landlord's market into a renter's market. So it's really important to stop this. 80% of the land is only allowed for like a little castle, right? We've got to change that and like flood the zone with housing, with duplexes, triplexes, granny flats, all of it.
Santa Fe is currently at less than 2% vacancy rate. Is that correct?
It's very low. I don't know if it's 2%. I believe you in this moment, but yeah, I know it's very low.
It was like 0.8%, like not that long ago in Los Alamos. And like a healthy market, a vacancy rate is like somewhere between 5 and 10%, depending on who you ask. And when you think about a vacancy rate, that is like a place to go if you are in like a shitty situation and you need to get out. You need a place to go. If there's no vacancies, there's no place to go. So we need to get our vacancy rates up.
Hi there, y'all. I have multiple kind of things that I could, while listening and taking notes and stuff, because I have to, because my brain goes elsewhere. I went through a domestic violence-ridden ending to a 20-year marriage. I've moved 8 times in 2 years, and I had to leave Santa Fe while I was a 4.0 GPA scholar and Phi Theta Kappa graduate at the community college. They say around 85 to 95% of women that you see on the street have gone through domestic violence. I knew, being cynical, political, raised in Europe, having all the left opinions and all the stuff in line, that this was going to be hard. Little did I know that there was so little support from the 3 states that I had to be in while I went through this. And that was New Mexico, West Virginia, very similar states, low funding, a lot of poverty, a lot of nonprofits having to step in for lack of government, and also lack of funding for those nonprofits because there are no donors to do this. And so for me, it was a juggling. It's taken 3 years. I'm still not through the rough. I'm counting August 30 will be 3 years for me. I'm still dealing with the financial issues, potentially dealing with housing issues. If I can't renew my lease, I'm going to be straight out. It doesn't make any difference. And 8 moves in 2 years means nothing because I've moved 6 times in Santa Fe before that. And we were in touch with Homewise, and I see Homewise has done a ton of difference for friends of mine, coworkers of mine, people that I really know. But we were denied help from Homewise when I was still married. We were tipping in. He was working for a pretty high income at Whole Foods. I was a student making $960 a month. But we were denied because our rent at the time was 65% of our income. And there was no help for us to get. So my question to those involved with the city of Santa Fe, and I would love to come to meetings. I just don't have time. I have a rolling schedule. I work at the plaza right now. I've completely sidetracked from my school career and my potential career. Vacation rentals. We have housing that sits empty here year after year. Nobody's doing anything about dealing with the aspect that Santa Fe relies on tourism. I get that, but build more hotels. To have homes go this way is also part of the problem. And the fact that developers like the guys over at Capitol Flats could literally buy themselves out of providing subsidized housing for that exact portion of our population that does not have money to pay for it elsewhere. So the Dallas developer bought himself out of having to provide subsidized housing. Commuters. Could we do something like subsidizing people's or giving some kind of credit for people to live and work in the same town? Because what we're dealing with right now is rush hour for service industry. You see people driving north, not so often to Albuquerque, because Albuquerque is increasing in cost of living too, so they can't afford to live there either. So we're looking at people, rush hour service industry traffic. Is there something we can do to provide the people that choose to struggle and maintain a decent relationship with their employers without getting burned out, without commuting back and forth? I've lived without a car for 2 years. That outside of town is not an option for me if I'm working downtown. It's not an option because America does not have infrastructure and public transportation enough to support. Most employers are gonna say, that's not a valid form of transportation, we're not gonna hire you. So again, this is a systematic issue that stems from so many aspects of society, not just the homeless issue. It is the aspect of getting employers to understand what they're dealing with, to not have to hire, not be afraid of hiring people that are far away, and also holding space for them who are struggling to make time and come back and forth to work. Because right now it's looking at, for some people, I work with somebody who commutes 2 hours a day, one way to get to work. That's 4 hours out of their day on top of an 8-hour work day. And how do we maintain this? Mental health, chronic pain issues, all the things that come as a side effect of having to struggle and maintain these issues. And subsidizing neighborhoods. One of the things that I think about, if we subsidize a newly built luxury apartment complex, can we subsidize a neighborhood? What would that lead to preventing crime and issues? Social integration. When we have, say, a neighborhood up in the foothills off Hyde Park Road, we're saying, I'm sorry, we can't sell to you anymore because you make too much money. We have to provide some of this housing for people that actually can afford to live here too. And that will benefit every single social segment that's in that part of the neighborhood. And that was my little,
Thank you. That's great. Yeah, you touched on a lot of issues there, so I don't know what's speaking to you. Vacation rentals was one point. Does anyone want to address that issue? Short-term rentals?
Well, earlier there was a trivia question about how many are around according to the database or whatever. What was that answer? Does anyone remember?
It was like 2,800. And we have a
Okay,
someone
second
in the audience.
question. It's a follow-up question.
Yes.
It's for the real trivia nerds here.
Exactly.
How
You caught
many
that.
are we actually permitted to have within city limits? Say that again.
1,200.
Yeah? No, have a debate. Go ahead. What was it? We'll play the prices right. 1,200.
We have,
I hear 1,250.
We have Marianne Stickler here, who's an expert on this, and she can provide some information on this.
I would love to talk about short-term rentals. Kind of my
Before you
thing.
do, the question is though, right? So how many were numbered? How many are permitted? Again, it comes back to this enforcement issue. I can make a law, I can make an ordinance, and I can feel real good about it, but if I'm not enforcing it, then I'm not doing anything.
You're absolutely correct, but it starts with the ordinance, and our ordinance is horrible. We have one of the worst short-term rental ordinances in the United States. I've read them all. And it starts with the law, and then it relies on enforcement. We have a terrible law, we have no enforcement. So numbers. As of yesterday, we had about 1,100 permitted short-term rentals. About 850 of those are in the residential areas. This is a very weird distinction that the ordinance makes, very, very odd. And we have about 250 permitted short-term rentals in the non-residential areas, which include residential neighborhoods. It's just an insane designation. In the so-called non-residential neighborhoods, which includes the historic neighborhoods, Palace Avenue, Guadalupe, South Capitol, there is no limit on the number of short-term rentals. In our ordinance, unlimited number of short-term rentals in what is considered non-residential, which is all of the BCD and other areas that are really more accurately described as mixed use or historic. So those are the numbers right now on permitted. There are almost the same number of unpermitted short-term rentals operating in the city limits now. So when we talk about having to build new infrastructure, new structures, new schools, new parks, and all the things that go along to develop the new neighborhoods, whether it's multifamily or single-family detached, we are ignoring that we have hundreds of homes in existing neighborhoods, on existing infrastructure, with existing schools, existing parks that belong to our city. And we can capture hundreds of existing homes all over the city. Don't let anybody tell you that this is an East Side problem. There are short-term rentals from Hyde Park to the airport, from West Alameda down to the interstate. They're everywhere. They're in all 4 council districts. This is not a District 1, District 2 issue. I'm sorry, I could go on and on, as Katie knows.
No apology.
If you would like to access my website, which includes a petition to lower the number of permits, to require owner occupancy for any short-term rental, which would mean only Santa Fe residents would even be operating a short-term rental. And a number of other conditions that need to be included, like proof that your HOA allows for it, which they don't require. Now, there are a lot of other conditions. I have a little card with my QR code and my website address on it. I'd love for you to look at my website, sign my petition. I've been working with the mayor and the city council for about a year. And a few weeks ago, I wrote them all a letter and said, let's get this done by the end of the year. I think this is the time to put on that political pressure. We have some people that are not running for re-election. Hopefully they're not beholden to donors and they're not as constrained about the flack they're going to get from the investors. But we've seen a history where our lawmakers and our enforcement staff are very sympathetic to short-term rental investors, and they are not very sympathetic to the constituents of Santa Fe.
Like I'm fine with like a better STR code. I would be curious to know if there's data that shows that a good short-term rental code actually impacts homelessness. Because in my studies, I haven't really come up. It's a very salient issue for a lot of people. People get upset about it. I totally understand why we want a good Airbnb code. I'm not convinced by the data that it has a significant impact on rents or rates of homelessness. So I guess that's my I think it's kind of the same with the Blackstone buying up of homes. That is a thing people, and I can't believe I'm raising it because it hasn't come up yet, but I think it can be kind of a distraction just because it's just not a huge percentage of the homes. Again, not opposed to smart regulations on these things. I'm just not convinced it's going to reduce the number of people who are living without shelter.
I have a quick, Katie, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Melinda, so when we were talking to you at for your interview for the video we did, you mentioned the series of events that occurred that led to you being houseless. And I'm just wondering right now, what advice would you have for a person who is possibly going through that at this moment?
I think I'd have more advice for the people supporting or who should be supporting that person, because that was not around. And it seems when you need help, when things go bad, they go bad all of a sudden. I had a breakup. A week later, I lost my job. Unemployment took a while to come in. And so within 5 weeks, I was evicted from my place, the last place I had, which was December 2016. And I was shuffling around for a long time in between. But I run into problems when I, try to connect with family. They're like, well, why didn't you go stay with your sister? Or why didn't you do this? And it's like, oh, those weren't options at all. Exactly. And so I think there needs to be a more connectedness for everybody to realize, how everyone is, if somebody's in trouble, what could potentially happen, and putting yourself out to help somebody out.
Something I think maybe we should talk about are the myths about why people become unsheltered. I don't think we've really talked about that yet. There's a lot of myths like it's got to be addiction, it's got to be mental illness, it's got to be people are being bused from San Francisco to Albuquerque, and that is not the case. Like these are myths. Most people who lose their housing stay, and they are part of a community. They stay in that community. They stay as close to that community as possible. Certainly having a substance use issue is going to make an individual more likely to lose housing, but we don't find that substance use can predict homelessness across cities very well, or poverty. Like the state of Mississippi has the lowest rate of homelessness in the country. California has the highest, right? So there's a lot of things that people believe about what makes someone lose their shelter, and a bad breakup is way, way more likely. Like most of the people I talked to, it was like a bad breakup, especially for women. So we really need to get rid of these bad stories about what makes people lose their housing. And I think a lot of those stories, they're there to kill your empathy. They're there to kill your compassion. They're there so you can turn your back on the story.
A land value tax has been proposed as an economically sound, that is, it benefits both tenants and developers, solution to housing. It's transparent and it's easy to administer. Unfortunately, it takes state reform. Are you guys doing anything to lobby to state legislature on land value tax reform? And if not, when?
I don't know anything about this.
Chainbreaker works within the city of Santa Fe because we believe that pushing 5 out of 9 votes is way easier and way more effective in this exact moment. The second thing is that we are Chainbreaker, again, philosophically, I guess I'll say it. We're part of a translocal organization, right? So part of what it is I don't know that the solution to Santa Fe is the same one to the solution in Hobbs. Whatever their issues are, I don't know the same thing, right? Because that's what we're asking the New Mexico legislature to try to figure out. The housing crisis in Hobbs is not the one in Santa Fe. It's not the one in Alamogordo. So I don't know. That's why we work hyper local anyway, because I think that once you start kind of zooming out a little too far, you're losing, again, the unique opportunities of that place in that moment to do whatever it is possible. The only thing I know is that as a housing organizer, we come from a long line of folks who have been doing this work, again, for generations before us and for generations after. I have to believe that if we push and win for a policy victory here, it allows for a policy victory elsewhere. Again, I will emphasize Santa Fe, first city, living wage tied to inflation, before San Francisco, before all these things. If we get a transfer tax passed, we'll be second. LA's right now has been, I think, shot down at there or something. I don't know, we're a little worried about theirs. You see what I'm saying? A win locally creates legal precedent for other places to do it. So that is how I think of it. I know Santa Fe, we know Santa Fe. I'm talking to the neighbors and the people here in Santa Fe. I have no idea about Philadelphia.
I want to talk about Midtown campus because what I heard is going to be 30% affordable. So I'm wondering what the definition of affordable is for those 30%. I understand they're not allowed to do fee in lieu for, which is a good thing, but 30% affordable seems way not enough to me. It seems like Midtown campus is going to end up being mostly for people who have money. And I'm just wondering if there's any hope for more affordability. It'd be a great place for Pete's Place to move to, for instance. A lot of things that could happen there that I don't know that they're going to allow at this point.
They allow what the people allow. So there's hope as long as you have hope. And more of you with hope. So again, you need to come to a meeting. Like it's not just coming to a meeting, it's talking to your neighbor, right? Because you can read our guides online, right? It's not just about coming to a meeting, it's about breaking down these things of I don't know you. No, I do know my neighbors. Do you know your neighbors? Because if you're saying to me I can't come to a meeting, okay, can you at least talk to your neighbor about whether they have the same problems you do, how much their rent went up, do they have cockroaches, do they have mold, does the manager treat them a little nicer than they treat you? Why? Right? So once you start having those conversations, well, then that despair actually kind of turns into this little ball of energy you can put into something else, which is, you'll notice, is what I do.
So I guess I have the microphone. I'm Lisa Hampton. I'm the chair of Los Alamos Health Council, and I was a real estate broker, including Santa Fe Properties for 25 years. My question is, what should be done about the problem with eviction? Because I'm in this beautiful lady here. If you have an eviction on your record, you can't rent any kind of property for 7 years unless you have a cosigner. But they tell you not to have a cosigner, not to put the individual who has the eviction on their record because it destroys your chances of having, being able to rent another property. And the problem with eviction is you're paying X amount for rent. You're doing a certain job. You have an income from this job. Then your rent goes up, I don't know, maybe 20%. They add $125 a month for maintenance fee, but they're not coming in and they're not repairing your home or doing maintenance or that kind of thing. Then your power gets shut off. $200, this is in Albuquerque, to get your power back on, right? On top of your bills that are delinquent and everything else. So you're immediately upside down. I have a 35-year-old son who was one of the silent homeless, right? He stayed in Albuquerque. He got evicted from his home. He lost his vehicle. He was doing DoorDash. He was making a good income, not a living wage, but a decent income, doing everything he could to try to stay on top of it. He got evicted and 7 years, he can't rent another property. So what can we do about that? Thank you.
Okay, so I'm gonna take us back in time for a moment. to 2020 when 3 groups of governmental agencies did something about eviction. The New Mexico Supreme Court put in an eviction moratorium and said during this health emergency, landlords cannot evict, but the debt accumulates. For whatever reason, once that health emergency ended, so did those protections. But again, what we're talking about is what is possible. Eviction moratoriums used to be something that were unthinkable. And suddenly, an unthinkable crisis faces us all, and the unthinkable becomes not just possible, real with the stroke of a pen. So the New Mexico Supreme Court made that happen. That also happened within city limits for residential and commercial, again, within the city of Santa Fe. So if you were a renter during that time, did you know you had that protection from the city? Did you know you had it from the state? And did you have it to whatever little extent you had from the feds? So again, what can we do about it? The point is we can't just sit here wringing our hands anymore. We know that there are things that political leaders can and will do when the need is there. So again, if that pressure is not being applied to them, then we're not doing our job as residents of this city. And so that again is why we organize. What indeed is to be done?
So speaking of yes. People must organize.
Sorry, I'm Jessica. I'm the administrative director for Chainbreaker Collective. And I just wanted to back up what Cathy was saying about the New Mexico legislature doesn't allow for this, but just this past session, there was a House bill that was on the docket to help folks who have evictions on their records. Because the state of New Mexico, no matter if you have faced eviction or not, if you paid the fee, the court fines or fees, it shows as your record as an eviction. And so they're trying to shorten that to 3 to 5 years, and they're also trying to sell those records. So yes, there is possibility that this is going to happen, but it is also possible that rent control will be made legal. So let's organize.
Melinda, I'm wondering if this LifeLink help with that as well when they're helping you to find your next place to live, right? So I imagine organizations like LifeLink can help with that.
They can. I mean, the good or bad news is that it's been so long enough. It's been like 9 years, and although it was the one that I had was, I think, judgment restitution, something like that. It's way past, so it's no longer qualified for me to put it on my application, which is good.
Okay, but LifeLink does help people stay and find a place to live.
Yes, it does.
Okay. I have one quick question that's actually for the audience. How many of you all here are running for mayor right now? Or other things you have with the sky issue? I think one walked out it was a million or so ago. But yeah, just making you aware of who's in the room. And what's that? It's me. Thank you very much. My name is Oscar Rodriguez. In fact, I was a treasurer on the campaign for the excise tax when it happened back then. But I do have a question, because I'm working through what's possible, what would be a strategy in the housing shortage price right now. And there's second homes. Annual Orat told me that one out of every 5 houses, 40% of houses in Santa Fe go empty. And it's not because they're dilapidated or anything like that. It's because they're owned as second home. So if we were to, Homewise were to produce 4,000 new units or 10,000 new units, what strategies would you advise for 2,000 units to become second homes? And by the way, I have friends now, who tell me pretty much throughout the city that second homes is a phenomenon throughout the city, and even in the South Side. So no matter where the units come up, people will buy them as second homes, and not even rent them, not even Airbnb them. They'll just keep them. So what strategy would you recommend for dealing with that? Yeah, if you do. 10,000 units, how do you keep 2,000 of those becoming second homes? It must be.
I mean, at Homewise, we build really strong relationships with our clients, right? And they're local folks, not people. I mean, you might be moving here from other places, but we're not typically supporting investors. So I think that's a really important part of the model. But absolutely, we need to solve this. I think there are some states across the country that have different property tax levels for second homes. And I think that's great. Now we can help. Our Constitution currently doesn't allow that, but we can change that. And we're talking about organizing. Those are things that we can change. And so I think there's a lot of work to be done. And I think property taxes is one method, but there are a lot more. I'm just not as familiar with the research around that. Two things real quick. And we all know how easy it is to change these constitutions. Luckily, though, New Mexico's state constitution does change pretty frequently, so that's the one. The second one, though, that I would say about that is that now you're also butting against the issue of real estate investment trusts, which is like private equity, right? So again, now we're talking about like Warren Buffett. So and Wells Fargo. So I don't really know how to fight that exactly, right? So that's why that one feels a little out of my pay grade, if I can put it that way. So but good luck. So a lot of those real estate investment trusts, they are drawn to where it's scarce. They're like, there's like a sign over your city saying this is a good place to invest. So ending the scarcity will make the whole thing much less appealing for them. The problem with the second homes, that's a sticky one. I would assume that like apartments would be a lot less appealing. You can't buy them for one thing, because they're rentals. So I would assume that increasing the apartment supply or like townhomes, I don't know, are they like buying townhomes? So I don't see it too likely. So increasing a lot of the missing middle.
They're also buying a lot of mobile home parks across the country.
Mobile home parks are a lot of everything.
In fact, real estate investment trusts are they're going to be what make us all homeless next after this next housing crisis, like 2008 that we just had. This next one will be precipitated by something like that.
Mobile home parks, there you own the little home, but you don't own the land underneath it. And those companies can be, whether they're mom and pop or big corporations, quite predatory. So those rules are problematic.
So resident and tenant opportunity to purchase is also one of those policy items that we look at. So like if a mobile home park area were to go up for sale, there's really nothing stopping them from selling it to the highest bidder. But if there was, let's say, a policy requirement law in place that said, no, you have to have a tenant right of first refusal, now you're giving those folks a fighting chance.
Okay. We have one more question. Joan, we actually wrap up and continue the conversation.
Yes.
Okay, let's go ahead.
So strategy that have been tried in the cities are working more closely with community development corporations like Chainbreakers. So you picked the people from the neighborhoods who will go into the new houses as they come to be developed. And the other thing too is in the surrounding states, there's a lot more homestead exemptions. Homestead exemptions are where if you live in your homes, you own your home, you live in your home, you can exempt a significant part of the value of your home from being taxed because you live there. In New Mexico, it's only $5,000. You won't make much difference. In Texas, for example, it's $75,000. So on that basis, you got what the penalty for the disadvantage, I guess, to the second homeowners is that now they would be paying taxes, much greater taxes, and the people who live in their homes are paying less taxes, and that burden's being shifted on that side, being shifted to that. But that would take some state legislation. But anyway, those are some of the trends I'm looking at. Right.
Eric.
Thanks. Hello. My name is Winston Delore. I'm an organizer with the Party for Socialism and Liberation and with the People's Housing Project. We were working on trying to pass AB 216 to repeal the state prohibition that prevents municipalities from setting their own rent control policies. And I this was the first legislative session where that actually made it through one of the committees. They killed it in the next committee. But I do think momentum is gathering. So I think as far as rent control and allowing local control of these policies to protect tenants' rights, there is momentum building. And in the lead up to the next legislative session, that is something we should look at. And, here in Santa Fe, it does make a lot of sense to focus on local policies, but this is an area that can open up local avenues for struggle. And being residents of the state capital, I think we have more leverage than anyone else in the state of New Mexico to apply pressure on this issue. And then second point, I'll try to make this quick. When I hear these, these proposals, and I want to make clear, I'm not saying this in a dismissive way. I don't intend it that way at all. Most of these proposals are looking at using market mechanisms, trying to direct the market into more pro-social outcomes. And I am not dismissing that at all. I don't believe it's useless. I'm, as of recently, a homeowner due to subsidies and policies like that, for which, and I'm extremely grateful to Homewise for that. They made that happen. But, something that I think we have to be very conscious of, especially as the point was raised about the great financial crisis and the housing crisis of 2008 and 2009, one of the, what had been seen as an accomplishment up until that point, something that, good policy had been driving to the extent that we can have good policy under the rule of capitalists. Was, there had been a lot of progress in, low-income home buying. A lot of poor families, a lot of racial minorities, had been able to get into homes, had been able to get out from under the thumb of landlords. And then what happened in 2008 and 2009? If you just look at the Black community in America, that was the single greatest destruction of Black wealth in the history of this country. And so, obviously we're living under the rule of capital. We can't ignore that. We can't pretend or wish away the dynamics of the market. But I think we have to be very conscious of the fact, to the extent we're trying to use those dynamics, that we're trying to ride those waves, it's not something that's under our control. Market conditions can change drastically, very fast, and with very severe consequences. And so one thing my question is, how do we look at, obviously, organize music to my ears. That's what I want to hear. But, how do we organize, how do we make our little victories in a way that are durable, in a way that can survive the next market crash, that won't be wiped out, the low income housing was wiped out in 2009. And I think, one possible example of that is if you look at, public housing, and obviously it's going to be more expensive to build a whole housing complex than to offer a little subsidy to a private developer, put their own money to build it. But if you look at, places that aren't, socialist countries that aren't, if you look at like Vienna in Austria, they have had public housing that is good quality, well-maintained housing that people are eager to live in, that has lasted for almost a century. And that has become a center of, from which working people and from which, people who would otherwise be renters can build and organize, and is a base for further struggle.
Yeah.
So I thought, how do we do it? I thought that was another rhetorical one, because I'm just like, I don't know.
I'd love to see Red Vienna style housing. I think when you talk about how, where are you? I lost you.
Sorry.
Okay. When you talk about how, the winds of the markets, there's also the winds of politics. And one of the big problems with public housing, so in Los Alamos, we have USDA rural housing. That's basically public housing. And in northern New Mexico, that housing program has been decimated by the winds of politics. Like, the problem basically with public housing is Republicans. Like, they exist, they win elections, and then they decimate public housing programs, and then they blame it on the poor people. They're like, look how disgusting they are, giving this all like park, because they have defunded it. So throughout history, we build public housing periodically, and then Republicans come along and they slash the funding for it. So that is like also a problem. Definitely markets are a problem, but also like, how do we get around the public housing that I have seen people in Los Alamos and in Espanola, this USDA rural program that has just been gutted. It's one of the worst programs in the United States as far as subsidized housing goes. These people are in horrible conditions. There are no tenant protections. Like, we got to fix that for sure. But how do we do that? Like, with the assistance of Republicans, like it's just a
It's not just Republicans. We have enablers on the Democratic side. That's right. For sure. Time and time again have made it possible for Republican. We're seeing it live right now at a federal. It happens on the state legislature. I was a Bernie Sanders delegate in Texas. I was chronically ill and had to step down for the state convention. But I saw, and this is not media, this is all just me and my friends that were in the delegate seats, that saw the Democratic Party sabotage. If we want to talk politics in America, we have to stop the sandbox rhetoric, because two parties are obviously not enough for the large portion of population that we have here. Exactly. But the litter box kind of rhetoric is still going to keep going back and forth, because they did this and they did that. At the same time, we have a growing population that are struggling under this chitter chatter and lack of stronger words. That'll be a topic of the concerning anger and stepping out the brain system. Okay. All right. So I think we're going to wrap it up there. Obviously, there's a lot more we can cover, but that's why we invite you to join us on the patio. We can continue having conversations, and we'll continue the conversation online. I just want to give thanks to the 505-O-Matic team, Warren, Drew, and Mateo Fernandez. He's getting our phone music. And I want to thank the Jean Cocteau. They gave us the space for food. So please here.
Thank you, Katie.
And you can check us out on all social media platforms except for X. You can catch the podcast on all podcast platforms. So thank you so much for joining us.